Man, it seems like every day there's some new headline about tech leaders and politics, you know? And like recently there's been a lot of buzz about Elon Musk and some stuff he said on Fox News,
Yeah, definitely. It seems like he's always in the news, right?
for sure. So anyway, he was talking about the protests against Tesla. And some of his comments, well, let's just say they got a lot of people talking online, especially when he started talking about a certain former president.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when Elon Musk talks, people listen.
Right. So that's what we're diving into today. We're going to be taking a look at Musk's statements and specifically how they're being analyzed in a video from the YouTube channel The Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
They put out this video called Elon Musk Boasts About How Much Power He Has Over Trump, and it's really got some interesting points about like influence, power dynamics, and the whole connection between big business and the government.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a super relevant topic right now.
Totally. But we're not here to pick sides or anything. We're just going to dissect these claims, like what did Musk actually say? How are people interpreting it? And what does all this tell us about like the big picture of how we talk about these issues?
Definitely.
All right, so first up, let's look at what Musk actually said about those Tesla protests.
Right. So according to the YouTube video transcript on Fox News, Musk kind of went straight at the Tesla protests. He said he believes that these protesters are being, and I'm quoting here, fed propaganda by the far left.
Propaganda, huh?
Yeah, and it's interesting because like that word propaganda can be kind of loaded.
It is.
It often gets used to like shut down opposing viewpoints, and like the actual meaning of the word can change depending on who's using it, right? We've seen that happen a lot throughout history.
Absolutely. It's a way to discredit criticism without actually engaging with it.
Exactly.
And Musk didn't just stop at calling it propaganda. He went on to talk about who he thinks is behind it all, saying that the real villains aren't always like the people actually doing the protesting or maybe like vandalizing stuff. He said it's the people that push the propaganda that encourages him to do it.
So basically shifting the blame, kind of.
Right. And it gets even more interesting because then he brings in the idea of the government getting involved. He says, the president has made it clear we're going after them.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, who he means by them, he specifically says the ones providing the money, the ones pushing the lies and propaganda. And the YouTube channel also points out that he did this like finger gesture, kind of like a gun, while he was saying this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, they do say that Musk is known for being kind of like quirky in how he acts.
Yeah, true. That definitely part of his persona.
But they're presenting that gesture as like part of this bigger picture of him suggesting, a forceful response. It's definitely a provocative move. Hard to ignore.
For sure. And like context is everything, right? A gesture on its own, I mean, maybe it's nothing. But with his words, the way he's talking, that's what gives it a different meaning.
Definitely. Okay, so let's get into how the Ring of Fire is actually interpreting all this. Like, what's their main point?
Well, the title of their video pretty much sums it up. Elon Musk boasts about how much power he has over Trump. They're arguing that Musk isn't just giving his opinion. He's basically saying, I have Trump's ear and I don't like these protests, so something's going to be done about it.
Oh.
Yeah. And then they go even further, suggesting that Musk is using this supposed power to go after not just the protesters themselves, but anyone who might be funding them too. That's a pretty big claim, It's suggesting that someone in the private sector can directly influence government action to like silence dissent.
So basically they're saying he's weaponizing his relationship with Trump.
Basically, yeah.
And to back up their point, they bring in some examples of what they see as this propaganda Musk is talking about. Like they mentioned the reports that Tesla was the most recalled vehicle of 2024 and the recall of almost all Cybertrucks because of problems with the adhesive they were using. They even like jokingly compare it to the bad glue in that movie, Matilda.
The bad glue issue, huh? Adds a whole new dimension to the criticism against Tesla.
Yeah, kind of ironic. But it really shows how the same information can be spun in such different ways depending on who's talking and what their agenda is.
Totally. I mean, Musk is basically saying all this negative stuff about Tesla is just like lies and misinformation. But the YouTube channel sees it as legitimate criticism.
Yeah.
And honestly, both sides have a point.
Yeah, for sure. It just goes to show you have to be careful about taking anything at face value.
Totally. And then there's the whole thing about funding these left-wing protests, which is something the Ring of Fire really pushes back on.
Right. They're super skeptical about it. They ask all these questions like, where's this money coming from? Who's holding it? And if it's such a big thing, why hasn't anyone found any actual proof? Especially when you consider that there are like right-wing folks who've tried to infiltrate these groups, and they haven't found anything concrete.
So it's like, if there really was all this money, wouldn't someone have found it by now?
Right. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it does make you wonder.
Yeah. So basically, you have Musk on one side saying all this stuff publicly, and then you have this YouTube channel with a very specific interpretation of what he's saying.
Right, and that's where things get tricky. Like, how do we analyze all this? We need to step back and be as objective as we can.
Definitely. It's really important to separate what Musk actually said from what the Ring of Fire is concluding from his words.
Like, he definitely says, the president has made it clear we're going after them, talking about those spreading propaganda. But he never actually says that he told the president to do that or that he's, like, controlling him or anything.
Right. But couldn't it also be that he's just hoping for government action that aligns with his views? I mean, where do we draw the line between, like, wanting something to happen and actually boasting about controlling it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the YouTube channel is basically building their argument based on Musk's words and, his history with the former president.
Which is definitely a real thing. We all know they had a relationship.
Right. So it's not like they're making stuff up. But saying that Musk is boasting about control, that's their interpretation. They believe it's supported by what he said and how he said it.
Yeah. And we also have to think about what it means when someone as powerful as Musk talks about the government potentially taking action against people who are critical of his company.
Yeah, that's a bit concerning.
Like, even if he doesn't actually have control, just saying that kind of stuff can have a chilling effect on free speech.
Right. People might be afraid to speak up if they think they're going to get in trouble with the government or some powerful person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it also brings up the whole issue of the right to protest.
Right, which the YouTube channel points out is a constitutionally protected right.
Most of the time, yeah. Obviously, it's not unlimited.
Yeah.
Like, if you set a Tesla on fire, that's not protected speech, that's just breaking the law.
Yeah, good point. There's a big difference between protesting and committing a crime, and Musk seems to be kind of lumping everything together, calling it all propaganda.
Exactly. He's making it seem like any criticism, whether it's legitimate or not, is somehow part of this big conspiracy.
Right. And then there's the whole funding thing. The YouTube channel is very skeptical about this idea of, like, a massive network funding left-wing protest.
I mean, they're not the only ones who think that. You see that argument online all the time.
Yeah, but where did that idea even come from? If there's no evidence, why do people keep saying it?
Well, I guess it plays into this narrative that there's this, like, shadowy group controlling everything from the shadows.
Right, like a puppet master pulling the strings.
Yeah. And that's something for you, the listener, to think about. Like, when you see these claims about secret organizations or money influencing protests, what kind of evidence do you need to believe it? How do you know what's true and what's not, especially when there's no clear proof?
That's a great question. So let's sum all this up. What are the main points we've covered in this deep dive?
Okay, so first we have Musk saying on Fox News that the Tesla protests are fueled by far-left propaganda and that the real villains are the people spreading it. He also claims the president is going after those folks.
And on the other side, we have the Ring of Fire saying that Musk is boasting about controlling Trump and using that influence to encourage government action against anyone who criticizes him or Tesla.
Exactly.
It's crazy how differently people can interpret the same word.
Totally. And that's why it's so important to be critical of everything you read and hear.
Right. You got to look at the context, consider different perspectives, and always, always look for evidence.
Definitely. And in this case, it's not just about interpreting words, it's about the potential consequences of what those words might mean.
Exactly. Like, what does it mean for our society when a powerful CEO can basically threaten his critics with government action? And how do we deal with these claims of hidden agendas and manipulation when they're thrown around so casually?
It's definitely something we all need to be thinking about.
So here's a final thought for you to take away. What does it mean for us when business leaders openly talk about using the government to silence their critics? And how do you personally decide what to believe when you see these kinds of claims about hidden motives and influence in the media?
It's a lot to unpack, but it's super important.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.